In this video, we're going to talk about how you will be marking the student's writing at the sentence level using the sentence writing rubric. The criteria that we'll be looking at when marking the student's writing are as follows. We'll be looking at whether or not the students write incomplete sentences, whether or not their responses address the prompt. We'll also be taking a look at their vocabulary, their grammar, and their mechanics. When we're looking at their vocabulary, specifically, we'll be looking at word choice, the spelling of the words, and whether or not the things that they say are factually correct. When looking at grammar, we'll be looking at things like word order, subject-verb agreement, pronoun reference, tense, and if there are any missing or extra words. And for mechanics, we'll be looking at capitalization and punctuation. So let's take a look at the rubric. As you can see, there are the criteria listed on the left-hand side, and we'll start by looking at grammar up at the top. For grammar, it says, all of the following grammar must be correct. Plural forms, no unnecessary words, no omitted words, word order, tense shift, a subject and verb are included, the subject and verb agree, and pronoun referent agreement if attempted. Now, if the trainees get all of these aspects of grammar correct, they will receive 1 point. If they get any of these aspects of grammar incorrect, they will receive 0 points for grammar. Now let's look at vocabulary. For vocabulary, it says that all words must have correct spelling, convey correct meaning in the context of the sentence, and be factually correct, with an additional note that Arabic-derived words should not be evaluated for spelling. Now, if the trainees get all of these aspects of vocabulary correct, they will receive 1 point for vocabulary, and if they get any of these aspects incorrect, they will receive 0 points for vocabulary. For mechanics, the rubric says that all words must have correct capitalization and correct punctuation. If everything is capitalized and punctuated that needs to be capitalized and punctuated, then they will receive 1 point for mechanics. If any capitalization or punctuation is not utilized when necessary, then they will receive 0 points for mechanics. Now let's take a look at relevance. For relevance, it says that the sentence must address the question prompt regardless of its veracity. No points are awarded if the response does not address the prompt. In other words, if the trainee's response does not address the prompt, the entire sentence will get 0 points, regardless of whether or not the grammar, vocabulary, and mechanics are all used correctly. For completeness, the rubric says that a complete sentence must be attempted, regardless of its omission of a subject or verb. No points are awarded if the response is not an attempt at a complete sentence. So the response may be relevant, they may use correct mechanics, vocabulary, and grammar, but if the marker does not feel that it is an attempt at a complete sentence, then that sentence will be rewarded 0 points. So when we're going through and using the rubrics, usually we go through a bit of a process, and we ask ourselves the following questions. First, we ask ourselves, does this response address the prompt? If no, then award 0 points for the response, and you can stop here. If it does address the prompt, then we can go on to the next question, which is this an attempt at a complete sentence? If no, award 0 points for the response, and again, stop here. If yes, then you can go on to the next question. Are words used correctly, spelled correctly, and factually correct? If no, award 0 points for vocabulary and go on to grammar. If yes, award 1 point for vocabulary and then go on to grammar. Are all aspects of grammar correct? If no, award 0 points for grammar and go on to mechanics, and if yes, award 1 point for grammar and go on to mechanics. And finally, are all aspects of mechanics correct? If no, award 0 points for mechanics and add up the total. If yes, award 1 point for mechanics and add up the total. So, each sentence can be worth a maximum of 3 points and a minimum of 0 points. So now that we've seen the rubric and looked at the criteria and gone over the process, let's take a look at some examples. Here's example 1. The question is, what color is your SESP uniform? Answer number 1, my uniform is blue. Now, is this response relevant to the question? Absolutely. Is it an attempt at a complete sentence? Absolutely. Is the grammar correct? Absolutely. Is the vocabulary correct? Yes. And are the mechanics correct? 100%. So this response would earn 3 points. Answer number 2, blue. While this response does address the prompt, it is not an attempt at a complete sentence, and therefore this response would be awarded 0 points. Answer number 3, my uniform are blue. This is relevant. It is an attempt at a complete sentence. The vocabulary is accurate. The mechanics are accurate. Unfortunately, we have an issue with subject-verb agreement, and so they would lose 1 point for grammar, but they would be awarded 2 points for vocabulary and mechanics. Answer number 4, my uniform is blue. Again, it addresses the prompt. It's an attempt at a complete sentence. Grammar is correct. Vocabulary is correct. Mechanics, unfortunately, are not correct. This sentence needs some capitalization at the beginning, and so this response would receive 2 points. 1 point for grammar, 1 point for vocabulary. Answer number 5, my uniform is purple. It's a complete sentence. It answers the question. The grammar is correct. The mechanics are correct, but unfortunately, the sentence is factually incorrect. My uniform is not purple, it's blue. And so this trainee would lose 1 point for vocabulary, but would still earn 2 points, 1 point for grammar and 1 point for mechanics. Answer number 6, safety shoes protect my feet. While this is a complete sentence, it unfortunately does not address the prompt, and so therefore this sentence would receive 0 points. It doesn't matter that the grammar and vocabulary and mechanics are all correct. On to example 2. The question is, what do we use a spanner for? Answer number 1, we use a spanner to tighten or loosen nuts and bolts. This is a complete sentence that addresses the prompt. The grammar is correct, the vocabulary is correct, the mechanics are correct, and so this response would earn 3 points. Answer number 2, tighten bolts. While this addresses the prompt, unfortunately, it's not an attempt at a complete sentence, and therefore this response would receive 0 points. Answer number 3, we use spanner, tighten nuts and bolts. This is an attempt at a complete sentence that addresses the prompt. Everything is spelled correctly, all the words are used correctly, everything's factually correct, so they would receive 1 point for vocabulary. Mechanics are correct. We have a capitalized word at the beginning of the sentence and a period at the end, so they would receive 1 point for mechanics. Unfortunately, we're missing some words in this sentence, so they are going to lose 1 point for grammar and come away with a total of 2 points for this response. Answer number 4, we use a spanner to loosen nuts and bolts. This is a complete sentence that addresses the prompt. We have capitalization at the beginning of the sentence, but unfortunately we're missing a period at the end of the sentence, so we're going to take off 1 point for mechanics. Spelling is accurate, grammar is accurate, so this response gets 2 points. Answer number 5, we use a spanner to loosen knots and bolts. Now, this is a complete sentence that addresses the prompt, but there are 2 issues with this. Firstly, spanner, knots, and bolts are spelled incorrectly, and there's no period at the end of this sentence. The grammar is correct, however, so we would award this response 1 point. Answer number 6, a spanner is smaller than a hammer. While this is a complete sentence, the grammar is correct, the vocabulary is correct, the mechanics are correct, it unfortunately does not address the prompt, so this response would earn 0 points. On to the last example, example number 3. The question is, when did you start at SESP? Answer number 1, I started 1 year ago. Bravo! This is a complete sentence that addresses the prompt. Grammar, vocabulary, and mechanics are all correct, so this response earns 3 points. Answer number 2, 1 year ago. It addresses the prompt, but it's not an attempt at a complete sentence, therefore 0 points are awarded. Answer number 3, I start 1 year ago. This is an attempt at a complete sentence that addresses the prompt. Unfortunately, start is not correct, should be started, and there should be a period at the end of the sentence. But we can award 1 point for vocabulary, since all of the words are spelled and used correctly. Answer number 4, I started 1 year ago. Again, this is a complete sentence that addresses the prompt. The grammar in this sentence is correct, but unfortunately, year is misspelled, and again, we're missing the period, so this sentence only earns 1 point. Answer number 5, I start 1 year ago. Again, it's a complete sentence that addresses the prompt, but now we have issues with grammar again. We still have an issue with spelling. The period is there this time, so we can award 1 point for mechanics. Answer number 6, I like SESP. While we're happy that the student is happy at SESP, unfortunately, their response does not address the prompt, and therefore, he would earn 0 points.